The first snowfall of the season had always carried with it a sense of quiet magic, the kind of beauty that transformed even the dullest suburban streets into white-draped wonderlands. For most of the neighborhood, the first day of snow meant hot cocoa, blankets, and holiday decorations. For the narrator, however, it meant something different. It meant building a snowman. The front yard of the small but cozy suburban home sat right on the edge of a cul-de-sac, where every lawn could be seen by everyone else. The homeowner had never been one for flashy lights or competitive yard contests, but snow brought out a childlike joy. That year, with powdery snow covering every inch of grass, the first snowman appeared in the middle of the yard. It was simple but cheerful. A tall figure made of 3 stacked snowballs, a scarf tucked neatly around its icy neck, a carrot nose sticking proudly from its rounded face, and a pair of mismatched gloves borrowed from the house's entryway to serve as hands. It wasn't extravagant, but it was visible from every angle of the street. By the time evening settled in, a few neighbors had noticed. Children giggled as they passed by, tugging at their parents to look. One family snapped a photo. The figure stood like a guardian of winter joy, harmless, silent, and content. But not everyone approved. Across the street, in a beige house that never saw a hint of color or decoration, lived a woman who had made herself the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood standards. She watched with disapproval from behind her blinds, muttering under her breath about how unsightly it looked. Where others saw fun, she saw a violation of her carefully constructed order. The next day, the scene changed. A patrol car rolled slowly into the cul-de-sac, lights flickering briefly before the officers stepped out. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering about what had possibly happened. And there it was, the sight of the officers speaking with the homeowner, gesturing toward the snowman. The absurdity of it all was undeniable. A complaint had been filed, and the complaint had been about a snowman. Word spread quickly. Phones buzzed, texts flew, and the story began to unfold online as neighbors recounted the ridiculous scene. The snowman itself became a silent symbol of defiance. Instead of backing down, instead of brushing it off and quietly melting back into conformity, a decision was made. If one snowman could trigger that much drama, then why stop at one? The yard became a blank canvas, and the snow became building blocks. By the end of the week, 3 snowmen stood side by side, each with its own quirky personality. One wore sunglasses borrowed from the car's glove compartment. Another sported a floppy hat. The third had a broom propped against its side, like it was ready for work. Children passing by squealed with delight. Cars slowed down just to admire the odd little lineup, and across the street, the blinds quivered with frustration as disapproving eyes watched the village begin. It was only the beginning. What started as a playful act of resistance soon transformed into something much larger. The yard, once just a patch of snow-covered grass, evolved into a creative winter wonderland. Each day, new figures joined the lineup, and each figure told a different story. A snow woman appeared next to the original snowman, complete with a necklace of pine cones strung together and a wide-brimmed hat borrowed from the summer shed. Soon after, 2 smaller figures appeared beside them, forming a snow family. A makeshift dog sculpted out of packed snow crouched loyally at their feet. Neighbors couldn't stay away. Parents brought their children to marvel at the growing display. Some dropped off scarves, hats, and old gloves to contribute. Someone even placed a toy guitar in the arms of one snowman, while another had a football helmet balanced on its round head. The yard transformed from a single snow sculpture into a community project. But across the street, tension grew. The woman in beige seethed with every new addition. She called, she emailed, she tried to convince others that it was a public nuisance. Yet, the more she fought, the more the snowmen multiplied. By mid-season, the yard held an entire snow village. At the center stood a snow church, carefully shaped with arched windows and a tiny cross made from twigs. Nearby, a snowman sat on a bench made from packed snow, holding what looked like a book. Children built snow lanterns that glowed softly with LED candles flickering inside. Soon it wasn't just the neighborhood that noticed. Photos appeared on social media. Posts went viral, captioned with jokes about the Snowman Rebellion. Videos of families posing in front of the display gained thousands of views. The yard had become more than a passive protest. It was a destination. Tourists began driving by just to see the now famous snow village. Some stopped to take selfies, others left small donations to help buy supplies. The once quiet cul-de-sac buzzed with laughter, chatter and flashing cameras. Meanwhile, the woman across the street felt her control slipping away. What she had tried to stifle had grown into something she couldn't contain. The police stopped responding to her calls, tired of being dragged into what had become a neighborhood joke. The HOA's warnings were drowned out by public support. What began with one snowman had become a symbol of resistance, creativity, and joy. And as the snow kept falling, the village kept growing. Yet with every new visitor, with every viral post, the woman's frustration boiled hotter. She wasn't ready to give up, and her next move would take the conflict to another level. As winter deepened, the snow village grew into a masterpiece that stretched across the entire front yard. Sculptures lined the walkway, snow arches welcomed visitors, and a snow fountain stood in the center, its frozen form sparkling under string lights that neighbors had contributed. But the beauty of snow is that it doesn't last forever. Warmer days threatened the sculptures, softening their edges, dripping water onto the frozen ground. The snow family began to slump. The snow church lost some of its shape, and the once proud village risked fading away with the season. Yet the impact had already been made. News crews arrived, capturing footage of the snow village before it melted. Interviews ran on local stations, featuring shots of laughing children, smiling neighbors, and the silent, scowling figure across the street who refused to step outside. The snow village became more than a seasonal joke. It became a statement. And when the weather finally took its toll, and the snowmen collapsed into uneven piles, something unexpected happened. The homeowner refused to let it end there. Plans were drawn, ideas formed, and neighbors eagerly pitched in. By spring, the yard bloomed not with snow, but with permanent sculptures carved from stone and wood. Artists from the community created snowman replicas that stood tall even in the sunshine. A small fountain was installed where the snow fountain had once been. The snow village had been reborn, not as ice and snow, but as a permanent landmark. The woman across the street was powerless. No law had been broken, no rule could stop it, and public support overwhelmed any attempt to silence it. The once quiet cul-de-sac had transformed into a celebrated attraction. Families came not only in winter but all year round to see the place where one snowman had sparked a movement. In the end, what was meant to be shut down became immortalized. The snow village stood proudly as a reminder of resilience, creativity, and the joy of refusing to bow to unreasonable demands. Across the street, the beige house remained plain and silent. Its blinds stayed closed, its porch bare, while just a few steps away, color, laughter, and life thrived. And so, the story ended where it had begun, with a single snowman, harmless and simple, sparking something far greater than anyone could have imagined.